What's it like to be the dad of 7 kids, all of which you've delivered at birth, and balance work too? Find out how it's done in just a moment.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest is Jim McKenzie. In addition to being a devoted husband and father of 7 kids, Jim has a successful career and is the founder of High Achieving Dads. Jim, thank you so much for being on the Fatherhood Challenge.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
Let's keep true to tradition as much as we can and start off with a dad joke. So, Jim, what's your favorite dad joke?
It's one that my kids always say reminds them of me, and it is hold on to your horses. Why are skeletons so calm? Because nothing gets under their skin. I think they always think I'm very mindful about how I act. So I'm proud of that one. But thanks for inviting me on, Jonathan. I love what you're doing, and Fatherhood Challenge just really sums it up.
Did you ever feel like being a parent was just too overwhelming and you were just out of your league being a dad of 7 kids? Or how did you overcome that mindset?
I absolutely didn't, and it was an odd journey I had because my wife and I got together very quickly. We were married in 3 months, and then had our first boy 9 months later. And we went entirely sort of intuitively into feeling that's what we were meant to do. Um, have there been times when I've felt overwhelmed? It's not really been in regard to the children. I think it's with what comes with it. You know, the challenges of time, the challenges of actually being able to actually spend quality time with them. Um, but I think when those moments arose, I thought, well, there's got to be a way to do it. And a simple example is that I had a very successful legal practice when my wife and I had our first child, and it was I went back to work after I took about 3 weeks off, which was unusual at the time. Um, but I had to start going into my office again, and I felt I got the blues. I got postpartum blues, and realised that that had to change and change quickly. So really, against the grain, I thought, well, let's just move the practice to home. And so I sold the building, and within 4 months, we were installed in my house, which was something that people. So I think in terms of overcoming challenges, I think it's a sorting out what my priorities are, and B, finding a solution. And some things have to give. It hurt my income for a while at the time, but the gain I got was that having an incredible bond with my boy, that I could be there. I saw clients with him on my lap. It was so I think it's probably finding a practical solution to those challenges, and there will be a cost, but weighing that cost against the benefit.
You said that you went through a postpartum blues.
Yes.
There's this image out there that postpartum depression is something that only women go through after birth. So
Yeah.
you're telling me that you've actually lived it as a father.
Yes. And I mean, it affects at least 1 in 10 dads, usually undiagnosed. And in me, it manifested that I literally, I had to sort of be working 1 minute, and then I would be by myself, and I would just plummet. And I'd never really sort of been like that. I've always been pretty outgoing, willing to get on with things, but I found my motivation just fizzled away. Um, and I dealt with it quietly at the beginning, tried to by myself, and then I thought, well, I've just got to be honest how I was feeling with my wife. And we hadn't known each other very long. I mean, we'd known each other for probably 6 months in total before we got married. So it was a big thing to open up to. But I mean, I think probably what helped me overcome it more than anything else is realizing that I could communicate those type of emotions for the first time in my entire life. And it was scary. And also, I mean, even now, it's not necessarily, like you said, it's not necessarily acknowledged that men do go through this. At the time, there was no acknowledgement that men go through this. But I figured it out for myself because I thought I've never been felt depressed or demotivated my entire life. And so, but my wife, being my wife, she was prepared to hear me out, and it took a couple of months to really get back to balance again. When I could spend all the time with her and my son. So yeah, I mean that's when I thought, well, yeah, and I spoke to more. Part of my practice was a family practice, so I dealt with a lot of divorce and child and custody cases. Um, and speaking to parents, I raised it with them and realized that their behaviors had changed once the baby was born. And so to this day, I still look for signs of it in the new dads I coach and speak to. It's a thing. It really is a major thing.
That's why I wanted to really zero in on what you just said, because it's really important for other dads out there, especially new dads, to hear that other men go through this. If you're experiencing the symptoms that you just mentioned, that you just described, it's time to reach out. And it is not a matter of shame at all to step up and admit, I'm not feeling well. This isn't me. This isn't my normal self, and I need help. And I think, I mean, I have so much respect, and I applaud that you stepped up and you had the courage to actually do that. So it's so important for other men to hear other men go through this and ask for help.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that. The saddest thing is that I've seen that in in various groups that I've joined and seen social media groups for men and dads that men have really been dragged over the coals when they've said, "Well, I can't cope." And there's still an element of men who will just say, "Well, you should just man up and get over it. You've got a family to support and look after." Granted, we have that, but how are we going to do that when we're feeling depressed? I mean, I knew at that time I was still able to function, but not on the level that I was used to. And you have to sometimes accept that you can't be that person who can has all the answers and is able to really solve those problems without help. There's no shame in it, and then to anybody who's listening, don't be bullied, because it is bullying. To not acknowledge those feelings are valid, it's bullying. It's not new age foo foo. It's not hippie nonsense. It's real. And it will affect your relationship with your wife and with your son. And women have, that's acknowledged that women do get postpartum blues. They have chemical changes. Actually, new dads have chemical changes that cause this, and physiological ones, mental ones. So do not be bullied into hiding those feelings. The more you talk about them, the closer your bond will be with the new mum and with everyone around
Absolutely. You're very much involved with helping out at home and actually being a partner to your wife.
you.
For some guys, this can be a tough one. So talk to those guys, please.
So I figure that we go through the whole process of creating a life, of then becoming a dad, and then raising these children. Um, if you're not going to be involved in your family life, you're going to miss out on so much. If you're not going to put that first in your life, you are going to miss out on so much. The I've been a dad now for 26 years, and my oldest son can still remember times when he was 1 or 2 when I had those horrible nappy changes that were really exceptionally bad. And he still remembers me always being the one who would clear up the mess when they were sick. And I had I just, I took I said earlier, I took a financial hit to change my life initially, and I would never have changed that because you get one shot at this. Um, and to build a great relationship, my wife and I always say that we have more fun sort of going into the department store, going to grocery shopping and having a chat and walking around and enjoying the time together with the children than we do than having a holiday. We always say we kind of find that moment every day when it feels like a holiday, even if it's chores, if it's cleaning the floors or washing up, turn it into an experience. And the children do that instinctively now. I mean, they'll do their bit and do the clearing up, and they'll call me over for a chat because I've been there. Um, so don't miss out on it because it breaks my heart when I do come across dads who said, "Oh, I wish I'd done what you did." And that's not to say I've got, I got it right. I did what was right for me. But there are fundamental things that you can do, even if, you are particularly career oriented, or you feel clumsy, or you don't know how to open up to your kids, because that's how you learn it. It's a practice, day to day, night and day. And if you put the effort in, the benefit is absolutely endless. Um, and that's, I will talk to you about that all the time. I will talk to you how to model your life and routines in order to get that benefit. That's what I do. That's what I've learned. I've applied what I've learned, and in different situations for different men, in whether they travel, whether they have to, be away absentee for months through work, or whether they're separated from the mum. There are ways to do it. That's what I do. So if you need anyone to talk to me. Three of them have said without any compulsion. I mean, the youngest is just turned 10, and he says, I can't wait to be a dad. And I said, well, hold on, you've got some time yet. But he said, you have such fun. And I
Wow.
don't mean fun in just the playing and kicking a ball around and stuff, but just clearing up their toys to with them. Yeah, and just sometimes, I mean, one of a quick tip I think was when I did have to sort of, I'd have trips, I'd have to go to court, and I'd make sure I'd drive home for, even if I was away, I had to drive 200 miles to court, I would drive home and go back the next day. And I remember one occasion I drove back, and I think, yeah, I had two children at the time. I got back about 7 o'clock in the evening, and they wanted to play, and I was tired. I was so tired. They were only about 3 and 2 years old. And I remember sitting in, I thought, okay, I'll just go and sit in the room. And I was sitting there, and they get, most of the time kids make up their own games and you're not necessarily involved in it, but I murmured
Hmm.
a few things, some of the action figures, and I was delirious. But that's one of the times that my boy remembered. um,
Wow.
yeah. And so, even if you can be in the same room and read a book, but if they're playing, especially when they're young, they remember you as being play daddy. And I was not play daddy on that day. I was semi-conscious daddy. But he reminded me of that a couple of weeks ago. Something I'd forgotten about. And as they get older, you'll find that when they mention those memories to you, it's absolutely golden.
Jim, this is the part we've all been really waiting for. You delivered seven,
Oh
all
yes,
seven of your kids.
yes.
There has to be an amazing story in those experiences. What what is it?
Oh boy, yeah, they were all eventful. The one where I'm actually the birth attendant. I mean, they've all been born into my hands. We've always used midwives. And basically, the midwives have realized that my wife and I worked very well as a team, in fact, better. Um, so they would talk me through how to deliver and, intervene as need be. But basically, at the moment that, the baby's coming into the world, there's me. I've done the catch. I've cleaned the baby. I've cut the cord, that type of thing. The most eventful one was the son who turned out to be called Jim Jr. That was not my choice. It was my wife's idea. And the reason for this was that we were, let's see, I think we were living in a very impoverished state. All right. I mean, I had to borrow money to pay for the midwife. But one thing we did do is we exercised a lot. So my wife exercised all the way through to the pregnancy, including the day of the birth, vigorously with kettlebells. She insisted on exercising that afternoon in this rundown house with very little air conditioning, and we're in Florida, and it was hot. And she said, "Oh, I don't feel too well," and we were already 2 days over the due date. So I said, "Shall I call the midwife?" And she said, "No, no, no, I'm okay." I checked. We had a little blood pressure kit, so she was perfectly normal and healthy. She said, "I'm just going to rest." This was in the afternoon. She woke up and she said, "I don't feel too well." And I said, "That's normally a sign your baby's coming." I mean, Jim Jr. was number 6. Um, I said, "I'll call the midwife." She said, "No, no, if you call the midwife, and this was true, she tended to slow down, and, the birth would become protracted because she just got performance anxiety." So I said,
Hmm.
"Okay, that's all good." I called the midwife anyway. We spoke to them. She said, "You seem very lucid. It's okay." And I said, "I'll keep an eye on it, and call you if contractions speed up, etc." So we were sitting on the bed, and she said, "Oh, yeah, I think I just need to go to the bathroom." She got off the bed, and then this big contraction came. And I thought, okay, showtime. And she got 2 feet off the bed, water broke. All the kids were in the other room watching TV. And I said, well, okay, we're doing this now. You know, I didn't even have a washcloth. There was no plastic
Wow.
anywhere. I mean, this was out in the wild. And the delivery took 15 minutes into my hands. Um, and we were playing Twister in this tiny little space next to the bed, in between there and this bathroom, in this tiny little 1950s house. And Jim Jr.'s head popped out, and I looked at him, and I remember saying, "It's you and me now, buddy. We're going to do this." And I was covered in amniotic fluid, and we got him out into the bed, played Twister because there was literally no room to move. In the meantime, my older son had called the midwife, and she came hurtling over, and we were sitting on the bed, nice and calm. And she was so upset that she missed it because she saw 4 of our births. But she said, you are a birth attendant. You can do this. You're good at this. So I'm on his birth certificate as his birth attendant. That was the proudest one. My proudest moment as a home birthing dad.
That is an amazing story. It took me, and I was so interested in your story because while mine was nowhere near as interesting as yours, but one of the things I was very, very adamant about, as in this is not negotiable, with any of the medical people involved or anything like that, was I wanted the very first human contact that my sons would feel when they came out. I wanted that first human
Yeah.
contact to be the hands of their father. And that
Yes.
happened
Yes.
in both cases.
It's important that the babies have as much skin time on you, naked chest to skin, because it really does. It actually, it's been shown to not only improve the bond but their development. And it brings a very primal. You actually exude a hormone that helps them develop, and the bonding of that is just so important. I mean, as I say, each and every time, um, it's been an amazing experience to share, and I think it's something to discuss as part of a birth plan. It's more difficult in hospitals. I acknowledge that, and not everyone is as focused on home birthing as my wife and I. Even though I would encourage it because there's a sad tendency for childbirth to be presumed to be a medical procedure,
Hmm.
and a good midwife knows exactly what to do at the time. And there's a good friend of mine who the first birth was a cesarean, and they were so traumatized by it when they're having a second child. He came and asked me what I thought about having a home birth, and I said, well, obviously get medical opinion, but if you can possibly do it, have a home birth. Um, and having home birth even after cesarean is actually not as dangerous as a lot of the medical profession would try and tell you it is. But you just have to be, everyone to their own sort of level and comfort level. And to a lot of guys, it's terrifying. Um, but I would urge a good midwife will really allay most of those fears that you have. The birth plan can apply equally to hospitals. Um, from what I haven't experienced it myself, but obviously I've spoken to thousands of dads about their birthing, and um, it's easy to get pushed to the side. But that moment is really important. Um, it also sets an intention for you to be the equal bonding partner. The night feeds. My wife and I, we figured out that, well, we'll just take it time to have a chat and to hang out together. you know.
Mm.
So we turn that into fun. That's been part of, because having 7 children, if I spent an hour a day with each, I would never do anything else.
Hmm.
Um, Likewise, my wife. Sometimes we've moved everything so that we work together, but we still means that we don't get that quality time that we would like. So when we do have, you know, the when we were raising children, had the feeds to do, the nappy changes to do, we would just sit in the bathroom together while we're bathing the baby and chat. Make it something positive. And so we always call it our time, because we're not going to get me time, but we don't want me time. That works for us. I understand other parents want me time, And so I think it's better if there is a clearly defined way of how you're going to deal with a young baby, and how you do need to spend that time together. Um, well, however much you say, well, I just wish I had a bit of quiet time to myself to read a book. There was always going to be books. You can always find that 10, 15 minutes to just sit there and talk to your partner and do something functional with a young child. I don't, I don't take no prisons on that. If you're saying I don't have 15 minutes to do it, dude, you're talking to someone who's raised 7 kids with a business, and there is always time. There are series that I've wanted to watch on Netflix for the last 10 years, and I haven't got to them yet. But so what? It's not a sacrifice; it's a benefit.
Going back to that moment, those first bonding moments that you had with each of your kids when they were born, what impact did those moments have on your relationship with your
Oh,
kids now?
oh, you know what? I can, if I was given a sort of smell test, because I remember smelling the tops of their heads as they were born, and I can identify them now. If I was blindfolded and say which child is in front of you, I would know.
Wow.
That's how intense it is, in a really positive way. The other children have also been the older children have been at the younger children's births. So when we have birthdays, it becomes quite poignant because I get a perspective from my older children of how they perceive what we were doing when the younger children were born. Um, so we tend to it tends to become a reminiscence. So I think, well, yeah, I like this sort of family history where we pass down through the ancestry, and it means they're very close and bonded in that they still see each other as those little babies being born. Particularly my oldest son. I mean, he's 6'8", massive dude, and he will still talk to his baby sister sometimes. She's 15 now, and she'll say, "Do you see me like that?" And he says, "Yeah, I still see you being born." I think, well, he's not even the dad, and yet he has that bond where if she's ever upset about something, he'll just be nurturing. I think it brings out the nurturing side and what in men in a way, which is unique. In that once you have those bondings with a newborn, um, really, if you focus on that in those moments when you do feel genuinely mad or change the world overnight, and you could think, well, actually, I've done something that will change the world. I've created this amazing child, and I believe that it makes the ills of the world drift away. I think in effect, and the relationships that develop in the young years have just they've just skyrocketed to something so beautiful as they've got older. And I do believe it stems from being there and doing those nurturing things as babies.
Jim, you're the founder of High Achieving Dads. What is High Achieving Dads and why did you start it?
It is about what is in your head that defines how good a parent you can become. So I started this process of auditing, for want of a better phrase, but it kind of evokes what it means. Just auditing where you are emotionally, um, and dealing in all aspects of anger, of trauma from the past, um, of communication, of setting boundaries. All of these things were being missed in what I'd seen with men who had been coached by other people. Um, and then there's this specter of, well, we've got careers. So how do you master the career and also be a dad? So that's where high achieving dads was sort of framed from, because I looked back on my own sort of long working career and 26 years of being a working dad with businesses, and realizing, okay, audit where you are mentally and what your priorities are. Secondly, um, think about how you prioritize your time given what you're struggling with, and then you deploy. So a three-step process to actually get to becoming a better dad. You can't become a better dad without those processes. This is I'm very ardent about that. That until you've worked out the auditing of your mindset and your emotions and your communication skills and your boundaries, um, that equation equals becoming the dad you really want to be. So I put it into everything that I'd coached, and I've done other programs on wellness and also sort of parenting skills, and I've put it all into one platform called High Achieving Dads. It's not just for, despite the name, it's not just aimed at dads who are captains of industry and executives. It's the same principle if you're just working a 9 to 5 job for someone else. The principles are the same. I want to expand it really across the world if I can, because it teaches you time management with priority in order to become a better dad.
How do dads find out about more about you and what you're doing and get a hold of you?
Okay, well, I'm all in right now. Highachievingdads.com is the website. All the contact details are there. Please feel free to go to highachievingdads.com. The contact details page is very extensive. Drop me an email and I'm all over it. If you just want to ask a question or get some help, wherever you see me, just do so.
I'm also going to make it very, very easy to find high achieving dads. If you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com, go to this episode description and look right below the description. The link will be right there. You just click on it. It'll take you right to high achieving dads. That way you can see everything that Jim is doing and be able to reach out and connect. As we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
The challenge is it's time to get, in effect, it's time to get a grip. And by saying that, it's time to get a grip of your mindset. It's time to throw off those shackles that have stopped you from becoming an even better father and a man, husband, work colleague. And by doing that, you'll just get the benefit of you'll just have so much benefit of just being the best father that you can be. And so the challenge I want to put down to any dad listening to this right now is to sit there and just spend time journaling what your priorities truly are in life. The functional ones, the emotional ones, and then balance them out and see if that fits with the relationship you currently have with your partner, wife, and children. Because we live in very, very difficult, challenging times. You're going to need to adapt. I've adapted what I've done in my life and in my fatherhood so many times over the years to circumstances. The more adaptable, the more adept you are at knowing where you are in your mindset and facing up to those and not fearing the consequence of being vulnerable and being able to communicate, the better your development will be. So reach out anytime. I've got a ton of resources. I know a lot of really skilled people who tackle things that I don't. But in general, don't suffer in silence. It breaks my heart, and I know that we can make our next generation of dads better than us.
Jim, thank you so much for being on the Fatherhood Challenge. It has been an absolute honor to have you here with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really appreciate all you do in getting out the information to people who need it. And it's been a real pleasure for me too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.